We are living in a day and age where people do not appreciate the creative process anymore. What happened to respecting that creative genius? What happened to respecting these mangaka, man? Man, these guys were really ahead of their time back in the day, creating some amazing stories that would be shared and told throughout generations. But sadly, that time is gone. The new manga that we have nowadays, it cannot simply live up to those standards. And, it's all thanks to these new fans coming in. The fandom has completely been ruined. And yeah, we're just here to talk about it. But anyways, Yuki here, the Rebelling Rose, the one chained to oblivion, returning yet again with another excellent video. Man, oh man. After I did that incredible review of Berserk Chapter 384, it really got me thinking about why do these people cannot accept when a creator passes and just leave that legacy alone. And there's many factors that come into this, right? There's the stages of grief, right? A lot of these fans, they go through that stage of grief, and then they have to come to a compromise. They have to decide whether or not they can truly let Berserk go once 41 is over, or to continue reading the nonsense that Mori has been writing for these past few years. And I feel like a lot of these quote unquote Berserk fans, they end up on the latter, and they just they consume whatever that man pumps out. It's just really sad to me. It's just like, god damn, you really don't appreciate Miura's hard work. It really goes to show. And of course, people are going to always have their little excuses, get butthurt like they always do. But I don't pay attention to any of that because I know better. I've been in the game long enough. So I just kind of drown out all the bullshit, all the noise, and just be about my merry way. But there are times where you can't ignore these things, where you have to bring it up in discussion. It's just like, okay, and we got to discuss this, because back in the day, it was a different story. We've always had proteges, we always had assistants, right? I mean, that's the entire culture of manga creation. Without that mentorship, without having those assistants working with that mangaka, we wouldn't be getting a lot of these newer series. We wouldn't be getting a lot of talent. You look all the way back to Tezuka days, man. I mean, when he first started, he was getting all the help he could get. He was hiring all sorts of talents, no matter who they were. And what did we get out of that? We got tons of amazing mangaka that would leave their stamp on the industry forever. For example, you have Baran-san and Kentaro Miura, working together side by side, giving that mentorship. And what did we get out of that? One of the greatest manga of all time. You look at Ken Ishikawa with Go Nagai. You look at Kazuhiko with Ishinomori, and it's like, wow, man, we have always gotten these proteges. We have always gotten these assistants that would go on to do better and greater things. But I've noticed with the current scene, we're not seeing that so often. You get Kei Urana, right? You get people like Tatsu that worked on Danadon. You get folks like that, Mori and what have you, Black Clover's creator, and some of these other shonen mangaka that have been assistants to previous creators that had hits or what have you. And I've noticed that, yes, while their series are a hit, they are a success, they never hold the same weight. They never have the same true impact that any of their predecessors have. They have never really truly surpassed their mentors. And it goes to show because that's all they know. They're not going off of anything else. Back then, a lot of these guys, they traveled. They've had interviews, they had discussions, they met with people. They're not just getting everything straight from their mentor. They're not just getting everything straight from what they're reading and watching, listening to, what they're consuming on media. They're pulling from different sources. They're coming from different angles. So there's always a room, there's always a space for fluid creativity, for a nice flow of creative energy. And I just feel like that's kind of missing nowadays. Like, you really don't get that anymore. And that's why you get a lot of these byproduct series, especially in shonen. This is very, very prominent in shonen. It's happening in other, uh, demographics, but especially in the shonen demographic, where a lot of these shonen creators, they love a series and they can't let go of that. They want to stick to that. You look at stuff like Jujutsu Kaisen, for example. Jujutsu Kaisen, you can tell, was definitely influenced by Hunter x Hunter, by Bleach. It wants to be those two series so fucking bad that it's really insane. And it's like, instead of letting go of that and trying to do something above and beyond, they can't. They just keep ripping off from those series and are not bringing anything new. A lot of their characters don't feel like anything that you can attach yourself to. They have these basic borderline personalities, barely a fucking character. And then you do throw in some traumatic event or some shock value, and then apparently we're all supposed to care because it's shocking, right? But you don't get any feeling beyond that. Once that dies down, once that hype dies down, once that shock value dies down, what are you left with? You're left with nothing. It's an empty void. And that's exactly what a lot of these series are doing. You look at Danadon, right? You look at Kagurabachi, and you're just looking at them, and it's like, wow. Danadon's entire existence is just to be as shocking to the reader as possible, to throw in as many references as possible, try to be as relatable and funny as possible, in any which way it can, while completely ignoring a good story, while completely ignoring structure, just being all over the place just for the sake of it. And it's just, how can anyone read that and feel connected? That's what's the major issue I have with a lot of these kind of series. Look at Kagurabachi, and it pulls from the same shonen we've seen over and over again, the same kind of fights, the same kind of reveals, the ass pulls. I mean, there's nothing to be shocked about anymore. You've kind of seen them all. You look at Kagurabachi, and it's just a complete combination of everything we've already seen within the shonen landscape, right? And yeah, when you think about that, it's also reflective on the audience. They know, hey, if I can be as close to my demographic as possible, if I look at these modern readers, if you can even call them that, because come on, let's be honest, a lot of these fans, quote unquote, they don't even read the stuff that they claim they love. But anyways, if they appeal to them, appeal to their weirdness, appeal to what they expect, then that's all they need, right? We're at the point where these series can do the bare minimum, and that's enough to get people excited. We're living in a day and age where hype pretty much rules all. It rules over story, it rules over characters, it rules over logic, it even rules over emotions. People's emotions are now tied to that hype. That's all it is. That's what a lot of these series do. And once that hype is done, people forget about it and they look for whatever else they can get hyped up about. What next adrenaline rush they can get out of a series, And I feel like that's not what manga was supposed to be about, Yes, manga has, of course, historically been looked at as juvenile, stuff for delinquents, stuff for losers and weebs and otakus and people with no life and all that stuff. But over time, it has garnered respect, especially in Japan. We have manga that's considered damn near literature over there. So it's on that higher level. But sadly, with the current landscape, with the current modern environment, manga has kind of stepped down now, especially with these new type of readers coming in. They just in it for the rush. They're in it for fights. They're in it for how hype it is. They're in it for the really simplistic humor that appeals to them. It's just really sad to see. There's no critical thought left, man. You look at what the community is like now. You got all these reactors running around on YouTube, on TikTok, Instagram, wherever they congregate. And it's just a whole covenant of a bunch of frauds that never really cared about manga a day in their life, never cared about anime a day in their life. jumping up and down over some new chapter, over this crazy event. You see it all the time. You look at something like Blue Lock, for example. That new Blue Lock chapter came out and people could not stop talking about Ego. They're like, Ego, man. Oh my God. Ego's crashing out, man. Oh my God. He's tweaking out, man. That's all they can say. It's like, goddamn, motherfucker. You can't read a series beyond that? You can't read Blue Lock for anything else other than to get, oh my God, Ego is acting crazy again, man. He's really done it this time. It's just crazy to me. And Ego has always been like that, so that's not even a surprise to me. I'm like, why are we being surprised by something that's been defined since the beginning? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Blue Lock is definitely one of those examples of a series that's definitely built around hype. And sadly, that's all it has: hype and shock value and, terrible edginess. And, I've tried reading through Blue Lock and getting up to date and seeing, okay, is it really as good as people make it out to be? Because I personally don't believe that. And while the art style is great, everything else about it sadly does not, go up to par. I mean, there are so many other sorts manga far better than that garbage. I feel like Blue Lock is just kind of that excuse where it's like, oh, we're going to use this to get people into sports manga. Oh, you don't like how corny a sports manga is? Oh, well, Blue Lock is actually edgy. And it's like, that's all it has, though. And there is such a thing as doing too much. There is such a thing as doing more is less. And that's exactly what I get out of something like Blue Lock, where, okay, we are just simply cramming in far too much edge, far too much unneeded drama, and over-explaining and over-analyzing every move and play, trying to make it seem like, oh, we can explain how they play and how their mindset is without seeming like, oh, they're just using some pseudo powers and bullshit or what have you. And we all know what's really going on. But of course, the mangaka, they're gonna try to explain over and over again, give out that exposition like we're damn stupid or something. And it's just ridiculous, man. Remember when manga didn't have to do that? I remember when series didn't have to do that, and sadly, a lot of these creators, they don't know what to do. They get written into a corner, right? And they're forced to kind of explain things, even though they know they can't explain it well. And it happens in shonen all the time, it happens. I mean, come on now. It's been, oh boy, absolutely insane. But yeah, it's absolutely crazy how this goes. But, I say all this to say that I feel like we have definitely lost a huge part of what made manga special. Now, I don't think that manga is completely dead. I think, if anything, it's more alive than any other medium. But I am starting to notice the cracks. I am starting to notice, the frauds coming in and trying to infiltrate and what have you. I have noticed there's a shift. I mean, it's more prominent in anime than in manga, but it's still there. But yeah, I just feel like we should be more appreciative of creators, man, especially with creators that pass away. I know that people are desperate to see more, but you look at something like High School the Dead, when the creator passed away for that, did they continue it? No, out of respect, they decided to discontinue and leave it as it is and move on to something else. But people like Mori, they can't move on. Berserk is all they have. That is their moneymaker. That is their living. So, of course, they're going to hide behind all this publicity stunts and try to seem like, oh, I'm really caring for the fans and really caring for Miura and really caring for the studio and his last words and all this. And we all know he can't be on his own with his own series, right? So that's why he's got to stretch out Berserk. But these other creators, they don't got to do that. They just leave things as they are, leave the legacy to rest, and they move on. It's okay to move on. You don't have to stay stuck on the same nonsense, man. You don't have to stay stuck on something that you know is inferior just because you're that desperate. just because you want to have an excuse to continue reading it. It's very interesting, man. I mean, I always find humans to be very interesting creatures. And yeah, anytime I observe them, I'm like, wow, human behavior, man, it's just something else. So contradictory. But anyways, with that being said, Yuki here, the Rebelling Rose. And until next time, I'll see you.